Your computer opened a web page you did not visit. It sent a report to a server you never authorized. It showed you an advertisement inside the menu you used to launch your own applications. And when you called that a problem, Microsoft said it was not. They were right. Windows 11 is not broken. It is doing precisely what the people who designed it intended it to do. And once you understand what that is, every decision Microsoft has made in the last 5 years stops looking like a mistake and starts looking like a plan. The company that built Windows 11 is not primarily in the business of selling you an operating system. If you look at Microsoft financial filings from fiscal year 2025, the numbers say something that most Windows users have never been told. Azure and cloud services grew 40% in a single quarter. Microsoft Cloud crossed $50 billion in revenue in one quarter for the first time in history. And Windows, the thing running on your machine right now, the thing you probably paid for when you bought your computer, contributed roughly 6% of the company's total revenue that year, 6% of $281 billion. That is the most important number Microsoft has never put in a headline. Windows is no longer how Microsoft makes money. It is how Microsoft keeps you in the room while everything else does.
So, the next question is obvious. If Windows is not the product, what are you?
The answer is built into your operating system at the hardware level, and it has been since the day you turned it on. Every Windows 11 installation ships with something called an advertising ID. It is enabled by default. It assigns a unique identifier to your machine and to your behavior across every app you open and every website you visit through Microsoft services. That identifier does not disappear when you close a tab. It does not reset when you restart. It follows you across sessions, across days, across years. And the setting to turn it off is buried 4 menus deep in privacy and security in a section most users have never opened. But the advertising ID is only one of at least 5 separate data channels running on your machine at any given moment. Diagnostic data, activity history, location services, the advertising ID inside Edge, connected experiences. Each one requires a separate action to disable. None of them announce themselves. Microsoft calls this personalization. The more accurate word is architecture. This is not a feature someone forgot to turn off. These settings are on by default, because default is where most users stay forever. If you are watching this on a machine running Windows 11, open your settings right now. Go to Privacy and Security. Count how many toggles are switched on that you never switched on yourself. In March of 2026, a Microsoft executive named Pavan Davaluri, the head of Windows, published a commitment to quality on the Windows Insider blog. It said the company would be, and I am reading from their own words, more intentional about where Copilot integrates across Windows. They would remove unnecessary entry points from Notepad, Photos, Snipping Tool, and widgets. They would give users more control over updates. It was positioned as a reset. 1 month later, Satya Nadella stood in front of investors in the third quarter 2026 earnings call and used a word that Windows users had not heard from him in years. Fans? He said Microsoft was going to win back fans. He announced a return to basics. And in the same remarks, multiple tech outlets confirmed that Nadella assured shareholders that Bing and Edge promotion inside the operating system would not be going away. 2 conversations. 2 audiences. 1 product. The quality reset is real as far as it goes. Microsoft is genuinely removing some Copilot buttons from apps that did not need them. But the advertising ID is still on. The data channels are still running. The Start menu still carries promotional content for Microsoft services, and Nadella told shareholders exactly why none of that is changing. Windows Recall was announced in May of 2024. It takes a screenshot of everything happening on your screen every few seconds and stores those screenshots in a searchable database on your machine, so you can go back and find anything you were ever looking at. When security researchers examined it, they found it captured Signal messages, WhatsApp conversations, and content from privacy-protecting apps that were specifically designed to leave no trace. Banking screens, medical records, password fields. Anything that appeared on the display was fair game. Early versions stored the entire database in plain text, unencrypted, on the local drive, meaning any piece of malware that reached your machine could walk out with a complete visual record of everything you had ever done on it. Security professionals described it as a goldmine for criminals, malicious insiders, and state-level actors alike. The backlash was immediate. Microsoft suspended the rollout within weeks of the announcement. They rebuilt the storage architecture, encrypted the database, required Windows Hello biometric authentication before the timeline could be accessed, and relaunched it as an opt-in feature rather than a default. In April of 2026, a cybersecurity researcher named Alexander Hagena published new findings showing that attack vectors against the Recall database persisted even after the year-long security overhaul. Recall is not a product that got its privacy model wrong by accident. It exists because Microsoft is building Windows into a platform that understands what you do on your own computer. A searchable timeline of your entire computing life is extraordinarily valuable to a company whose cloud and AI businesses run on knowing what users do. Recall is opt-in today. The architecture is already there. Mark Russinovich is the Chief Technology Officer of Microsoft Azure and one of the foremost authorities on Windows internals alive. He wrote the sysinternals tools that system administrators have relied on for 3 decades. He knows this codebase from the inside. On May 6th of 2026, he posted a video to Microsoft's own developer channel confirming that Windows 11, the operating system Microsoft released in 2021 with minimum hardware requirements that locked out hundreds of millions of functioning PCs, is still built on the Win32 programming interface from the 1990s. Not influenced by it, not adjacent to it, built on it. That is not a third-party criticism or a disgruntled former employee. That is the Azure CTO of Microsoft acknowledging in public that the bedrock beneath the modern interface, beneath Copilot, beneath Recall, beneath the new taskbar, is code that was written when Windows 95 was new. A system that was designed before broadband internet existed in most homes, before smartphones, before cloud computing had a name. His exact words, as published by multiple outlets, those of us in the computer scene in the 90s were thinking flying cars and moon stations by the year 2026, not Win32. Microsoft's own telemetry, cited at their Build 2025 developer conference, found that over 90% of desktop applications in active use on Windows 11 are Win32 binaries. 30-year-old code. Now hold that fact next to this one. Microsoft required TPM 2.0, secure boot, and a supported CPU generation to run Windows 11. They drew the line at Intel 8th generation and AMD Ryzen 2nd generation processors. Industry surveys at the time found over half of business PCs in active use could not pass that check. These were not ancient machines. Many were 4 to 6 years old, fully patched, running Windows 10 reliably. Those machines were excluded from an operating system whose underlying architecture was written before most of those machines existed. The security argument for TPM 2.0 is real. Researchers agree that hardware-backed encryption improves the security baseline. But critics, including nonprofit digital rights organizations, argued that the cutoff was drawn more aggressively than security alone required, and that the practical effect was to push millions of users toward new hardware purchases. Microsoft eventually published a support page acknowledging that workarounds exist and they would not actively block all of them. Their stated reason was that leaving those users on an unsupported OS would produce a worse security outcome. That is true. It is also true that every new PC sold with Windows 11 generates OEM license revenue and hardware ecosystem value that a 7-year-old machine does not. The computer on your desk or your lap is running 30-year-old code wrapped in a new interface that was designed by a company that makes 6% of its revenue from Windows licenses to keep you connected to a cloud ecosystem that generates $50 billion a quarter. Every default that collects your data is a default, because defaults are where users stay. Every ad in the Start menu is there, because the Start menu is real estate. Every Recall screenshot is infrastructure for a company building AI products that run on knowing what you do. Every hardware requirement that retired a functioning PC was a requirement set by people who understood exactly who benefits when a machine has to be replaced. None of this is hidden. It is in every earnings call. It is in the words of Satya Nadella when he stands in front of shareholders and says Bing and Edge are not going anywhere inside Windows. And it is in the privacy settings, 4 menus deep, where the defaults were set by people who understood that most users never go looking. Windows 11 is not broken. It is the most successful version of Windows ever built for the company that makes it. The question is whether it is working for you. If the answer is no, you are not alone. 43% of the people who have voted in this channel's poll said they already made the switch. Linux Mint runs on the machine Microsoft told you to replace. It does not come with an advertising ID. It does not screenshot your screen. It does not push Edge every time you open a file. It does not show you an advertisement in the menu you use to launch your own applications. If you are still on the fence about making that move,
The Windows Escape Kit walks you through the migration step by step, from backing up your files to getting your printer working on the other side. $17 on Gumroad, link in the description.
the frustration you feel when Windows does something you did not ask for is not a bug report. It is confirmation that the system is working as designed, just not for you. If this channel has been giving you the full picture on what Microsoft is doing with Windows, consider subscribing. Leave a comment below and tell me which of these defaults you turned off and how many were already on when you checked.